Shotram Chakshusparshanam Cha Rasanam Granameva Cha Adistaya Manaschayam Vishayanupasevate. Would somebody like to chant? Shotram Chakshusparshanam Cha Rasanam Granameva Cha Adistaya Manaschayam Vishayanupasevate. Shotram Chakshusparshanam Cha Rasanam Granameva Cha Adistaya Manaschayam Vishayanupasevate. Shotram Chakshusparshanam Cha Rasanam Granameva Cha Adistaya Manaschayam Vishayanupasevate. Word for word. Shrotram, ears. Chakshu, eyes. Sparshanam, touch. Cha, also. Rasanam, tongue. Granam, smelling power. Eva, also. Cha, hand. Ristaya, being situated in. Mana, mind. Cha, also. Ayam, he. Vishayan, sense objects. Upasevate, enjoys. Translation. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Please repeat. The living entity thus takes another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Purport. In other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in his next life he gets a cat or a dog body and enjoys, like a dog or a cat. Consciousness is originally pure, like water. But if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure. But consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When, therefore, one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of many other forms, for there are 8,400,000 species. The verse again. Shotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam grihanam yegacha adistaya manaschayam vishayanupasevate. The living entity takes another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Now this comes directly after the 8th verse, which reads, "The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body again and again, quits to take another. And therefore, Prabhupada, Krishna says, living entity thus, taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects." So we have gone through the banyan tree, or maybe they call that banyan tree, in which it's described that we simply are so entangled in, does this thing tighten up at all? Okay. Which gets us so entangled in the material energy that we don't really know how to find our way out. And we go, somebody was describing
the Bhagavad Gita as it is.
We go jumping from branch to branch like monkeys. And we don't really know where we're going. We think we're enjoying. We get enough enjoyment, and that's enough. And then we try another enjoyment, and that's enough. And we go on and on. But we never get really satisfied. And the reason we never get really satisfied is because we don't recognize we don't realize that our eternal position is a servant of Krishna. Prabhupada explains here, Krishna consciousness is our real, pure, what does it say? Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. And that is because we are pure, because we are spiritual souls. Spirit souls are pure because they are part and parcel of Krishna. Fragmental parts and parcels of Krishna. That doesn't mean that although Krishna is supreme, although Krishna is supreme, any of his parts and parcels take on the same attributes. However, because we are Tatastha Shakti, and we are easily influenced by just about anything, we get influenced by impure association. And Prabhupada repeats the word adulterated consciousness twice in this purport. Adulterated. Does anyone not know what adulterated means? Adulterated means like if you get ghee in the market, but they adulterate it by putting some kind of oil in there. That's adulterated. Or somebody writes something, and somebody takes the same thing and rewrites it. They adulterate it. So, our consciousness is pure. But by association, we take on that association. It's not very easy to resist the influence of your association. That's why it's very important to take good care about choosing your association. And if you're fortunate enough, then you run into the Hare Krishna movement, and you take advantage of all the nice devotees in the society. But even within the society, there's good association, better association, and best association. So that is what we have to judge. We have to use our common sense, and we have to see what is good for our spiritual life and what is bad for our spiritual life. What is good for our spiritual life, we will see that we are progressing and become happy in a way which is not temporary. It is real happiness. And if we're taking bad association, then we just keep on missing the point of spiritual life. And we have to realize that we have to get back on track. Otherwise, we have to take another body and do it all over again. We have to learn how to walk, how to learn how to talk, how to do mathematics, and all that good stuff. If we understand that our conception of life can be purified by devotional service, as Krishna explains, if our conception of life can be purified by devotional service, then we have a good chance of taking a better birth. We also have a chance of not having to take another material body at all, because our conception of life will take us just as the air carries aromas, and our subtle body will carry us where we have to go. Therefore, it's very important to take association of the spiritual master who can give us guidance. And we have so many spiritual masters in our society. We have Diksha Gurus and we have Shiksha Gurus. And by that association, we can learn what is more practical for us. Sometimes we can learn from some person better than other people. Some people have ways of expressing things that are easier to understand. But the main point is, because the senses are grouped around the mind, we have to learn how to control the senses and control the mind. The mind will try to satisfy the senses. Well, actually, the mind will be influenced by what it is that the senses want, and the intelligence will try to find the right way to do it. So if our senses are more completely satisfied by serving Krishna's senses, then our mind will be controlled. The old saying, the mind is the best of friend or the worst of enemies. So if you control your mind by controlling your senses, and you can only control your senses by using them to serve Krishna. Otherwise, there's no control. You can't artificially control your senses. That's impersonal. And it's not very long lasting. And generally it'll drive you to bitterness. However, if you control your senses by the enjoyable process of devotional service, then you can always be satisfied. And the reason you become satisfied is because Krishna is satisfied. And when Krishna is satisfied, you become satisfied, because Krishna is always satisfied with his devotees. And his devotees are always satisfied with Krishna. That's why we have this wonderful process that Srila Prabhupada introduced after so many years of waiting to come to America. He started out preaching in America because he didn't seem to have too much success in India, because everybody was caught up in imitating the West, because that was seemed to be the place to go, the way to go. So he went to the West, and he found so many dissatisfied young people because they were trying to satisfy their senses in ways you cannot imagine from where you're sitting. But as soon as they met Srila Prabhupada, they completely changed. One devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, how is it that we came from such a fallen condition and we can listen to you and try to follow this process? How is it? So Prabhupada answered, he said, when I called, you came running. And that's what happened when Prabhupada went to America, because everyone was so dissatisfied. There was a war in Vietnam, and everyone was trying to bail out. There were people the men were being drafted into the war. Nobody had any feeling to go to war. They were escaping to Mexico or to Canada just to avoid the draft. And there were people who were helping them also, busing them. There were people who were completely dissatisfied with the materialistic way of life. And that materialistic way of life, that so-called material prosperity, which was so attractive from foreign countries. And basically when they were doing whatever they would try to imitate, the Western countries, it was actually a very cheap way of imitation. They didn't even get it right. But in America, where everything was prosperous, everyone was leaving their families and traveling, joining different communes, different groups, to see if this group had the right philosophy, because they weren't satisfied with what they had. People were leaving their colleges and universities, they were leaving their families, they were leaving their jobs, they were leaving their careers, simply because they were not satisfied, because they had already enjoyed their senses up to the fullest, and it just didn't seem to be working. So we're so fortunate in India that we have the highest philosophy. And we have the highest of the highest philosophy. We have 4 Vaishnava sampradayas. And in any one of those sampradayas, we can learn how not to take another body, so we don't have to get a different nose, a different ear, a different set of eyes, a different set of touch. We only have to go back home, back to Godhead. As Prabhupada mentioned in a couple of purports ago, that originally we have come from Krishna, and the whole point is to go back to Krishna. So that if we live right, then we can die right. We've had so many good examples of very elevated devotees who have recently, and not so recently, left their bodies. And they were all in very good consciousness. My godbrother Brahmananda Prabhu was always practically eating, sleeping, and dreaming of Srila Prabhupada all day, all night. So when he left his body, He left his body with a smile on his face. Have you ever seen anyone die with a smile on his face? Generally, it's a very painful experience. And you have to go and take another set of eyes, another set of ears, nose, sense of touch. Brahmananda Prabhu died with a smile on his face. Why? Because that was his consciousness. His consciousness was Srila Prabhupada was always there, right beside him, at every moment of his life. So naturally, Prabhupada would be there at the moment of death. And Prabhupada already promised that the purpose of the spiritual master is to take the devotee, the disciple, and hand him over to Krishna. Now this is a very wonderful concept. My godbrother Kurmarupa just left on a very auspicious day. But actually, any day that any devotee leaves his body or takes his body, we consider auspicious. That man always served the cows, always served the devotees, and chanted up to 100 rounds every day, because he would get up early and stand over the cows and chant, because there were always these people who would come with lorries to steal the cows. So he would get up and he would make sure that nobody came in to steal cows. So what do you do when you're waiting? You chant. So that's what it was. And in his free time, devotees would come over and he would give lectures. He was a brilliant lecturer. He was a Gurukul teacher for 20 years. And when there were festivals, he would sit with his class, his little class boys, and he would cook and they would help. And they would just all do the whole thing all together by achar, by example, and then they would follow the example. And they would always be doing it together. And so when he was operating care for cows, the same thing happened even with the workers. Even as workers were not 16 rounders, they still, by his association, had a wonderful consciousness. They had Krishna consciousness, and they loved the cows. And they loved the devotees. So, it is our duty, it is recommended by the Shastra, to take good association, to take up residence in a holy place, to read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I forget the other two. Does anybody remember the other two? There's 5 very important things that we have to do. We have to study the Srimad Bhagavatam, take Guru Ashraya, take the Diksha from a Guru. We always have to have good association with devotees, and so on. Of the 64, and live in a holy place. And there's one more place. There's one more of the 5 that I can't remember, because my memory is just like a sieve. But those are 4 very important things to do, so that we are ensured to take a better birth. Even if we don't achieve the actual goal, at least we're on the way. And bhakti is situated in such a way that it takes you to the ultimate end, arms flailing and legs kicking. You just have to go. You don't lose anything, you only gain anything, and you pick up where you left off in your next birth. Even Bharat Maharaj, even though he had to take a birth as a deer, his devotional tendency was so strong that he remembered what he was supposed to do. And he also remembered that one of the main reasons he fell down was because of lack of association. So he went in the forest to the places where ashrams of great sadhus were, and he stayed in association of these sadhus. So that in his next birth, he took a body of a great devotee named H.G.Parvati. Interesting that they named him Bharat also, H.G.Parvati. So he realized what he had done. He actually remembered his previous births. And we don't remember our previous births, but we're told that we turned our face away from Krishna, and we're told that by association we can get back on track and get our Krishna consciousness back. So this is what Bharat Maharaj did as a deer, and what H.G.Parvati did. He avoided any association at all, because practically every association around him was mundane and had nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. So he knew the Shastras very well. His father tried to teach him, and he learned, but he also knew from his previous life the Shastras very well. So when it came time to preach, he preached to King Rahugana, who was a king. And he saw the danger, that King Rahugana was in danger of coming into the mundane platform with false ego, thinking that he was a king and he was something special and that everybody else should do his bidding. But H.G.Parvati explained to him that this time you may be a king, another time you may be a pauper, or another time a demigod, or another time a dog or a cat. So one should not be in the bodily conception of life. One should understand that one's purpose of life is to perform devotional service. Otherwise, you're in danger of taking another birth. So Prabhupada used to preach like that. Just live this life carefully and go back home, back to Godhead. Everyone always likes to say, it takes at least 3 births. Actually, it takes hundreds of births. And we don't know which birth, how many births we've already taken. But we know we must have taken enough births so that we came to this wonderful society of Krishna consciousness and this wonderful Bhakti Shastri literature, the wonderful Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, Isopanishad, Nectar of Devotion, and so on. We've come to the Krishna book. We've come to so many wonderful stories about Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj, Devahuti, Queen Kunti, wonderful stories about Draupadi and Gandhari. So we know our correct situation. So we must have taken enough births, so we came up to that level. So Prabhupada told us, just live this one life very carefully. And if you live this life carefully, then you get the result. And your spiritual master will take you and hand you over to Krishna. And you'll get a very nice set of eyes, nose, and ears, and sense of touch that you'll be able to use in Golok Vrindavan. To play with Krishna, or to be with Krishna's friends, or his parents, or to be with his conjugal consorts, or to be with his cows, or even the grass. But this is our goal. So I'm sorry, but I wasn't exactly prepared to give a class. So this is all I have to say on this subject. If somebody has some questions, please feel free to ask your questions. And if there are no questions, then all glory is to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. No questions. Jai Har. Gaur Pranam.